Okay, we are live now.
Hello, good evening everyone. I'm Anjali and I take care of program side of things in Newton's data science course. Thanks to everyone for joining in. Today we are excited to have two distinguished individuals from Newton School to guide us through the journey of business analyst interviews. Allow me to introduce Harleen Chadha, our esteemed associate program director, and IIM Ahmedabad alumni, and Chaitanya, a proficient business analyst. Their combined expertise will shed light on how to crack the case study challenges that one can face during interviews. Today's session will provide an insider's view on what to expect and how to excel a business analyst interview. Harleen, with her vast Harleen, with her vast experience in shaping analytical curriculum and mentoring professionals, will provide us an interviewer's perspective, highlighting what they seek in potential candidates. On the other hand, we have Chaitanya, an alumni of BITS Pilani, who works as a business analyst and has worked with quite a few companies in identifying business areas that can be improved and increase efficiency and strengthen business processes. So, without further ado, let's start the session. Harleen, you may take over.
Thank you so much, Anjali. Thank you everyone for joining in. I'll just proceed to move to our mock interview section. Hi Chaitanya, it's good to have you here today. I've gone
Yeah,
through your resume. I've gone through your resume. It's great to have you here. Would be great if you can also introduce yourself.
Sure. Thank you, Harleen. Very nice to meet you as well. It's been a wonderful opportunity for me to interview here. I'd love to introduce myself. I'm currently a business analyst working with Newton School, as I've been for the last 1 to 1.5 years. I honestly got into business analysis by accident, but I really found loving that I love working with customers. A lot of people see technology and data as forcing complexity into their lives, but I don't think it has to be that way. I love listening to data. Data has a lot of stories to tell. So when I started out with this journey, in my second year of college, I started working with a little bit of data for a college course. And eventually, post that, I started looking at it at a larger scale. I worked with Udan, where I helped understand how e-commerce platforms work with large amounts of data, and then streamline their pricing products. Right? How do they price things? And then I got to work with another large firm, that is PayPal, where we tried to protect and identify fraudulent customers. Right? Look at the data, identify which transaction could potentially be fraudulent, and that's how I fell into love with how big data could help us make our lives easier. And post that, I've been working with Newton School. Newton School has been a wonderful experience because there's a lot of passion in terms of how do you bring education into people's lives. And although it might be very counterintuitive that data does not have a lot to do with education, but educational insights also come with a lot of data. When we handle huge sets of data for the students of Newton School, there's a lot of potential that this data could help us in driving insights, right? Let's say student perspectives, what students are liking, what students are not. So that's how I fell into data science. That's how I started being a business analyst, and that's about me.
That sounds great, Chaitanya, and thank you for taking me through that journey. Right, it helps to know how you got into data and then all of your career moves as well. Um, Before we proceed to the case, just another question on how you found education to be an area that you wanted to jump in.
Oh, that's great. Actually, for a long time, I think for a lot of people, education is a core interest because that's one arena where you can potentially bring a lot of impact with a very little push, right? Let's say there's a very famous saying as well: "You feed a man a fish, and then he comes back again." But you teach a man how to catch a fish, and then you're done for life, right? So that's the sort of impact that it has. Everyone is fascinated by education. In my first year at college, I started teaching students at NSS, right? And JVS Jawahar Vidyalaya Sangathan is an exam that is very reputed. And I trained a few students, and one of them got into JVS, and his life dramatically changed, right? So that's when I realized the impact education could have. And Newton School has been doing a lot of great work in terms of creating massive impact for a lot of people at once. And I thought that I could be a part of the journey as well. I interviewed and I got through, and since then I've been helping this revolution.
That sounds great. Thank you for sharing that. Do you have a pen and a paper with you?
Yes, I do.
Awesome. I'd like for us to solve a case together, Chaitanya. If we can go ahead.
That sounds great. Let's do that.
Awesome. Okay. Um,
I think there's a little bit of power issue. Yeah, I think you're back.
okay. Okay, so let's assume you are working with a client who's, let's say, a port operator in the western side of India. The client over the last few years isn't meeting the revenue expectation that the client had. Can you identify the problem and can you think of a recommendation of a solution?
Uh, sure. I've made a couple of notes. So before I actually begin my analysis, I'd like to understand and state the problem objective for making it clear. So we want to understand why there's a decline that has been happening in the revenues of these companies, right, of the port, and how long has it been existing?
Oh, okay, so we're not looking at a revenue decline. We're saying that they had a revenue projected and they're not meeting the expectation of that revenue.
Oh, okay, okay, understood. Thank you so much for clarifying that. So can you please share some numbers regarding these expectations and what the actual profits have been?
Uh, I think we can park the numbers, but you can assume that the problem has been existing for the last 3 to 4 years.
Got it, understood. So could you also share with me what these revenue streams are for the company, for the ports?
Sure, sure. So for a port operator, there are three revenue streams. There is a rental income, there is storage, and then there is handling fee.
Okay, and our revenue expectations haven't been met across these three streams, or is it specified to one of them?
Yes, it is across all the three streams.
Okay, and I assume that the costs have been consistent. Is that fine?
Yes, that's fine.
I assume the cost. Okay, great. So, all right. Uh, so, as the costs have been same each year, I can ignore the costs for the purpose of this analysis. I hope that also makes sense. So, I just said, I'm not sure if you have
Yes,
heard.
that's a great assumption. Yes.
Great, great. So, could you explain these three revenue streams? I just want a little bit of clarity in terms of what these revenue streams mean.
Can you hear me, Chaitanya?
Yeah, yeah. Hi, Arlene. I can hear you. Can you hear me better?
Sure. So, okay. Rental income is essentially the fee that the client charges for ships to dock at the port. Uh, there is storage costs, which is essentially the cost of warehouse, where the client provides services for their clients to then store their items. And handling fee is essentially labor fee to move items.
Understood, understood. That's great. I think now I've understood the problem. So now I'd like to understand the business environment a little bit. Could you tell me a little, as you said, they operate on the west coast of India. Could you give me a specific geography? And also in this geography, have the competitors been facing similar problems or is it just our port?
Right. So the client is based out of Rajkot, Gujarat. The competitor hasn't been facing the issues as much as our client has been facing.
Got it. I think I've got enough understanding in terms of the problem. Can I take a minute to jot down my thoughts and my structure?
Sure, please do. Yes.
All right. So as we were discussing, that we've ignored costs for the sake of this, and we already have that profits haven't been met as per expectations. So we look at revenue, and revenue could typically be a function of two things. Like we could say that it's a number of clients and the price we charge per client, right? That would be the revenue. And in these two parameters, do you think, let's say that we deep dive into both of these parameters and see what makes sense and what does not? Does that make sense? Is that a fair approach? Okay, great. Could I take another minute
Yeah,
to
that's a
jot
good
down my
approach.
notes?
Let's go ahead.
Sure.
Sure.
So, all right. I'm assuming that since it's a function of price per customer, price per client into number of clients. So, have we reduced the price per client in the past few years or in this particular year where we've not met the expectations?
No, we have not changed the price.
Okay, sure. So then I would say that then we have a problem with the actual number of clients who have been operating with us. Uh, so would you think that that is fair, that our actual number of clients have reduced?
Right.
Got it. So now I would say that we have a shortfall in the number of clients that we've been having. Now it could be two things, right? It could be either a supply side issue or it could be a demand side issue. In terms of like there aren't actually enough number of clients who are there. But so I would assume here again that there's you said that the competition's numbers haven't declined as much, or they have been doing fairly well. So I would here make an assumption that the demand side there's no problem, but on the supply side there's a problem in the sense that we haven't been able to live up to expectations, and we haven't been able to give the services that we want.
Right. That's a great inference. You can move ahead.
Oh, okay, great. So now I'd like to further. So given that we have not been able to do this from our side, there could be two problems, right? One thing I would say that there's a problem in terms of internally, in terms of how the kind of service that we're providing to these clients, or secondly, if there are any external factors that are acting on the company in order to make sure, in order to affect the kind of clients that we're getting. So if that is fine, then I think I'll look at both of these segments separately. First, look at internal problems. I'll like to list down a set of factors where internally there are some the levels of challenges that could be there, and you could then help me with understanding if any of these cases there's an actual problem. If not, we'll move
Sure.
further. Okay, great. So I'll just take another minute to frame my thoughts here. Okay, so one thing that's obvious is that there's a demand that is decreased or not, and I think in our case it is not. Then we are also looking at, let's say, the experience of the customers, right? In terms of if they've been a customer in the past. I think since it's a port, there's a large retention segment to it. So if it's that would be the second aspect. If there's the retention has gone down. The third thing is, are our customers aware of these port? It's possible that clients have increased, but a lot of the clients don't know about our port. So that would be another challenge. That is the positioning or the awareness, right? And then the pricing, right? If our pricing has been different, but I think in the initial part of it, we've assumed that the pricing is not very different and the prices haven't changed. And then the presence of competition. If our competitors are doing something better that we are not able to do, and so these are all the internal factors that are there. So, do you think any of these factors have had an impact in reduction of the profits and the revenue subsequently?
Sure. So your assumption, your approach has been right so far. I think the experience that the client is providing is quite state of the art because it's also a new code. So these factors aren't an issue for the client.
Understood. Got it. So I think internally, I hope I've exhaustively covered the aspects of customer delivery. So do you think I should be looking at external factors now?
Yes. What would be your approach to look at external?
Great. So I like to look at external factors. Now, external factors typically are something I think that are outside the control of the port. And within this, I would like to segment it further. Maybe I'll just take a minute to think of this, the kind of segments that I could make. So I think, of course, we'll have multiple segments of socio-economic problems that could exist, right? So one would be that there are social factors. Another would be if there are any political issues. So social would be one, political, economic factors in terms of the area's economy suffers, or if there's anything that's particular to this thing. Technological issues, if there are any, if probably we are using an app or any of the technology that is misfunctioning. If there are any environmental problems, if you've been in the recent news for any environmental issues or so. Legal, and another fact I'd like to add is our social image, if that falls into this. So I think these could be the factors that we're looking at, again, for the sake of reiterating, since it's social factors, political, economic, technological, environmental, legal, and the reputation. These are the 7 factors that I could potentially look at in terms of external factors that could impact our revenues.
Sure. Can we speak more on the political factors? What do you think these could look like?
I think most of the political factors could be things like, let's say, due to an upcoming election or due to change of sudden laws, due to any regulations or compliance, due to technically opposition from the government, there are certain issues that we could be facing or certain laws that are preventing us to do best. So this could manifest in terms of compliances, in terms of regulations and laws, in terms of any additional charges that we as a port must have to bear that others don't due to certain qualifications or anything of that sort.
Got it. Okay. So you are kind of right there. The reason that the client had taken up this port was because it was a special economic zone, which means that the manufacturers that dock on that port would get some tax relief. However, there has been protest in the local bodies at Rajkot, and hence that hasn't gone through, which means that manufacturers aren't getting the tax relief that they were expecting, and the client is facing then issues in getting new customers. With that as the identified problems, Adanya, can you think of a solution that you would want to recommend to the client?
Got it. And I think that's actually a very interesting proposition in terms of how this is manifested. So, sure, I think there would be a couple of recommendations that I'd like to make. So, one would be that if it is possible, we get the government to sanction a special economic zone to this, right? We could lobby them to do the same. Or we could lobby with the government to improve the downstream logistics and the manufacturing process. Another thing is we could, just because it's not an SEZ, we could probably compensate it by the pricing that we are giving, right? We could give them a better price. Or we could partner with the downstream logistics players and then ensure that the customers also have a better experience. I think these could be a mix of the solutions that we could use. Harleen, can you hear me? I think we've lost Harleen. We'll just quickly check with her. Yeah, hi Harleen. I think there was some network issue.
My internet failed me. Could you hear me, or should I repeat myself again, Chaitanya?
I did get to hear you. So you were saying that there was an SEZ, Special Economic Zone, and due to certain protests, we were not able to get this. And you would ask for recommendations. That's where I'll
Yes.
pick it up. So I was saying that I was just making notes of the recommendations while you were away. So I have two sets of recommendations. We could actually do both long term and short term. So long term is what will help us build this sustainably. On the short term, it will help us to quickly get things up and running for the quarterly or half yearly targets. So in the long term, I'd say that we should definitely lobby with the government to ensure that we get a special economic zone status, right? And I'm sure that even the protests as they die down will have that. Other thing that we could do is we could lobby with the government to improve the downstream logistics infrastructure to reduce the overall costing. Apart from that, we could also align our services with the industry in order to make sure that overall we don't have a problem with this, right? In terms of the short-term solutions, one thing I off my mind is that we could also do very attractive pricing, that despite this we are able to attract clients, right? So that is something that we could do. Or we could partner with any of the downstream logistics partners and ensure that the clients have a good experience there, and therefore we could do this.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you so much, Atanya. That's well done. Uh, and with that, I think I'd want to end the mock interview. And for the audience that we have, just a couple of pointers that I think Chaitanya did really well. One was that in his introduction, he's talking about his love for the role, and then as well as taking us through why he, stepped into the role, of why he loves data, why he's, looking at this opportunity. He also moved us through his career, talking about how he used analysis to solve business problems, which is the crux of this role, right? And the second thing, I think, while solving the case, it's always great to ask questions. He also reiterated the problem statement that was given. So asking clarifying questions is a great way to understand the case really well. Make relevant assumptions as you are going along, and step back whenever you need to take a pause and then analyze what is the answer that you're giving. With that, I think I'd want to end it for today. Anjali, if you want to come back on stage.
Sure. Harleen, even I had a great experience, and I think it was a wonderful experience for having been this in this case interview with you. And I think even for our viewers, it's been an ennobling experience to sort of understand how these roles are. So I think with that, thank you so much, all of you, for joining us on this YouTube live, and thank you so much, Harleen. It was a great time.
Thank you.